David Park was 38 years old when his mother-in-law called him useless at a family dinner in front of 12 relatives after he'd quietly funded her $127,000 lifestyle for the past 18 months. And what happened in the next 72 hours would teach Patricia Chen the most expensive lesson of her life. It was Saturday, November 9, 2024, at Canlis Restaurant in Seattle, Washington, one of the most expensive establishments in the city, where entrees started at $95 per plate. David sat at the head of the table, his wife Lisa beside him, watching his mother-in-law Patricia Chen hold court like some kind of visiting dignitary. She was wearing the $2,400 Burberry coat he'd paid for in August, the $850 Cartier earrings from September, and carried the $3,200 Louis Vuitton handbag from October, all charged to the American Express Platinum card he'd given her in May 2023 with a $50,000 credit limit, a limit he'd had to increase twice. David earned $165,000 a year as a senior software engineer at Amazon, working on cloud infrastructure. It was good money, especially for someone who'd grown up in a one-bedroom apartment in Federal Way with his single mother who cleaned office buildings. He'd worked his way through University of Washington on scholarships and part-time jobs, graduated with a degree in computer science, and spent 14 years climbing the corporate ladder. He was proud of what he'd built, proud of the three-bedroom house he'd bought in Ballard for $847,000, proud that he could take care of his family. But apparently, none of that mattered to Patricia Chen. "You know what your problem is, David?" Patricia announced, her voice cutting through the conversation at the table. She'd had 3 glasses of the $280 per bottle Chateauneuf du Pape he was paying for. "You have no vision, no ambition. You're just useless when it comes to real success." The table went silent. David's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Lisa's younger sister, Emma, who worked as a receptionist making $38,000 a year, smirked. Her brother, James, unemployed for the past 8 months, nodded in agreement. Patricia's sister, Margaret, who declared bankruptcy twice, murmured something supportive. Even Lisa's father, Richard, who Patricia had divorced 15 years ago after he lost his contracting business, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He'd flown in from Portland for this dinner, and David had paid for his $340 round-trip Alaska Airlines ticket. "Mom," Lisa started, but Patricia waved her off. "No, let me finish. Look at the Johnsons. Their son-in-law Stephen just bought them a vacation home in Maui. A whole house. Computer job, brings home his little paycheck. His little paycheck is paying for this dinner," David said quietly, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. "It's paying for the wine you're drinking. It's paying for that coat you're wearing." Patricia laughed, actually laughed. "Please, this is basic hospitality. This is what family does. Stephen bought his in-laws a $1.2 million vacation home. You give us dinner once a month. It's embarrassing, honestly." David looked at his wife. Lisa was staring at her plate, her face red. She wasn't defending him. Again, they had no idea what was coming. The dinner had cost $1,847.32, including tip. David paid it with a smile, thanked the server, and helped Patricia into that Burberry coat. He drove them all back to his house, the house he'd bought, the house he paid the $4,200 monthly mortgage on, where Lisa's family was staying for the weekend. He said goodnight to everyone, went upstairs to his home office, and opened his laptop. American Express online account. Login. View authorized users. Patricia Chen. Account opened May 15, 2023. Current balance, $47,238.65. He stared at that number. $47,000 in 18 months. He clicked on the transaction history and started scrolling. It wasn't just the clothes. Patricia had been living like a millionaire on his dime. $4,200 at Nordstrom on July 3rd, $3,800 at Saks Fifth Avenue on July 18th. Weekly groceries at Whole Foods ranging from $300 to $600. A $2,100 spa day at Jean Juarez on August 22nd. Dinner at El Gaucho for $890 on September 7th. A dinner she'd told everyone her friend Margaret had treated her to. A $6,700 cruise to Alaska in June that she'd posted all over Facebook, claiming it was her retirement gift to myself. Monthly hair appointments at a salon in Bellevue for $340 each. A $4,500 payment to a cosmetic dentist for veneers. A $1,200 payment to a personal trainer. David felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't just shopping. This was a complete lifestyle funded by his credit card, while Patricia told everyone, including her own daughter, that David was cheap, unsuccessful, and useless. If you enjoy stories like this in watching entitled people learn expensive lessons, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. And tell me where you are watching from. He kept scrolling. The charges went back further than he remembered. Patricia lived in a rent-controlled apartment in Capitol Hill that cost her $1,100 a month, a miracle in Seattle's housing market. She'd retired at 60 from her job as an administrative assistant at a law firm, where she'd made about $52,000 a year. Her pension was $1,800 a month, plus another $1,400 from Social Security she'd started claiming early. That was $3,200 a month in fixed income, plus the $1,100 rent meant she should have had $2,100 left over for expenses. Instead, she'd spent an average of $2,600 per month on his credit card for 18 months. David opened a spreadsheet, he was an engineer after all, and started categorizing. Clothing and accessories, $23,400. Restaurants and entertainment, $11,200. Travel, $8,900. Personal services, salon, spa, trainer, dentist, $7,100. Groceries and household items, $4,200. Miscellaneous, $2,438.65. He sat back in his chair, staring at the numbers. Nearly $50,000. That was almost a year of his after-tax salary. That was money that could have gone into his retirement account, or toward paying off the mortgage early, or into the college fund he and Lisa had been planning to start for the kids they wanted to have. But what really made his blood boil was the hypocrisy. Patricia had spent the past 6 years, ever since he'd married Lisa, making snide comments about his background, his mother's job, the neighborhood he'd grown up in. She'd made it clear that her daughter had married down, that David wasn't quite good enough for the Chen family, even though Richard Chen had lost everything in a bad business deal, and Patricia had worked a middle-class job her entire life. The Chen family wasn't wealthy. They just convinced themselves they were supposed to be. David looked at the time. 11:47 p.m. on Saturday, November 9th. The house was quiet. Lisa's family had all gone to bed in the 2 guest rooms downstairs. Lisa was in the bathroom getting ready for bed, probably hoping he'd be asleep by the time she came out, so she wouldn't have to talk about what had happened at dinner. He clicked on Manage Authorized Users, found Patricia Chen's name, hovered the cursor over Remove User, but something stopped him. If he just canceled the card now, Patricia would throw a fit, Lisa would defend her mother, and he'd be the bad guy again. No, this needed to be strategic. This needed to send a message. David opened a new browser tab and logged into his bank account at Chase. He looked at his checking account balance, $23,400. His savings account, $78,900. His investment account at Vanguard, $187,000. He'd been saving and investing religiously since his first job out of college, putting away 25% of every paycheck. He could afford the $47,000 Patricia had spent. That wasn't the point. The point was respect. The point was that she looked him in the eye and called him useless while wearing items he'd paid for. David heard the bathroom door open. Lisa walked into the bedroom, saw him at his desk, and hesitated. "You coming to bed?" she asked quietly. "In a minute," David said without turning around. "About tonight, Mom didn't mean—" "Yes, she did," David interrupted, his voice still calm. "She meant every word. She'd been drinking." "Lisa." David finally turned to face his wife. She was 36 years old, beautiful, a middle school teacher who made $67,000 a year and spent most of it on her family. He'd fallen in love with her kindness, her intelligence, her compassion. But somewhere along the way, she'd learned that keeping the peace with her mother was more important than defending her husband. "Do you know how much your mother has spent on that credit card I gave her?" Lisa shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know. Maybe a few thousand?" $47,000 in 18 months. The color drained from Lisa's face. That can't be right." David turned the laptop screen toward her. "See for yourself." Lisa walked over slowly, looked at the screen, and her hand went to her mouth. She scrolled through the charges, her eyes getting wider with each line. The Alaska cruise, the spa days. "Oh my God, David, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was this much." "She called me useless tonight," David said softly, "in front of your entire family, while wearing a $2,400 coat that I paid for, while drinking $280 wine that I paid for, at a restaurant where the bill was over $1,800 that I paid for." "I'll talk to her," Lisa said quickly. "Tomorrow morning I'll tell her she needs to cut back." "Cut back?" David laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Lisa, she doesn't need to cut back. She needs to pay for her own life. I gave her that card because you said she was struggling after retirement. You said she needed help with groceries and medications. This," he gestured at the screen, "this isn't groceries and medications. This is a luxury lifestyle funded by someone she openly disrespects." "So what are you going to do?" Lisa asked, and David heard the fear in her voice. "I'm going to make a decision," David said, "and I need you to trust me." They had no idea what was coming. Sunday morning dawned bright and cold. November in Seattle meant the temperature was hovering around 42 degrees, and rain was forecast for the afternoon. David woke up at 6 a.m., his usual time, even on weekends. He went for his regular 5-mile run through the neighborhood, came back, showered, and started making breakfast. By 8:30 a.m., the smell of bacon, eggs, and fresh coffee had drawn Lisa's family to the kitchen. Patricia appeared first, still in her bathrobe, a $340 silk robe from Bloomingdale's that David's credit card statement said she'd bought in September. She poured herself coffee from his $400 Breville espresso machine and sat at the kitchen island. "Good morning," David said pleasantly, setting a plate of eggs in front of her. "Morning," Patricia said, not quite meeting his eyes. Maybe she did feel a little guilty about last night, or maybe she was just hungover. Emma and James wandered in next, followed by Margaret and Richard. Lisa came down last, looking tired. She'd barely slept, David knew. He'd felt her tossing and turning all night. "I was thinking," David announced as everyone settled in with their breakfast, "we should all go out for lunch today. My treat. There's a great place in Pike Place Market that just opened." Patricia perked up. "Oh, that sounds lovely. I need to stop by Nordstrom anyway. They're having a sale." "Actually," David said casually, refilling coffee cups, "I was thinking we could talk about something first." The room went still. Lisa shot him a warning look. "I've been thinking about what you said last night, Patricia," David continued, his tone conversational, "about success and ambition and vision. And you're right, I do lack vision in some areas." Patricia looked surprised, then pleased. Well, I appreciate you recognizing that. So I've decided to focus my resources more strategically, David said, starting with some budget adjustments. Lisa and I have been talking, he glanced at his wife, who definitely looked panicked now, and we think it's time to cut back on some expenses. Tighten the belt a little. You understand. Of course, Patricia said, but she looked confused. That's very responsible. I'm glad you think so, David smiled, because I've canceled the credit card I gave you. The kitchen went dead silent. Patricia's fork clattered to her plate. What? The American Express card. I removed you as an authorized user last night. It's no longer active. Patricia's face went from confused to pale to red in about 3 seconds. You can't do that. That's my card. No, David corrected gently. It's my card, my account, my credit limit, my responsibility for every charge. And I've decided I can no longer afford to maintain it. But, but I have expenses. I need that card. I'm sure you do, David said. And I'm sure your $3,200 a month in retirement income will cover your actual needs. You know, groceries, medications, the things you told us you needed help with when I gave you the card in the first place. Patricia turned to Lisa. Are you going to let him do this to me? Before Lisa could answer, David spoke up. I'm also going to need you to return some items. The Burberry coat is brand new with tags still on it. You can return that for a $2,400 credit to my card. The Louis Vuitton bag too, that's $3,200. The Cartier earrings were purchased less than 60 days ago, so Nordstrom should take those back for $850. You want me to return my gifts? Patricia's voice was shrill now. They weren't gifts, David said calmly. You spent my money without permission on luxury items while calling me useless. I'd like the money back. This is insane. Patricia stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Lisa, tell your husband he's being completely unreasonable. All eyes turned to Lisa. David watched his wife's face, saw her struggling with the choice she knew she had to make. Family versus husband, peace versus justice. The pattern she'd followed her entire life versus the marriage vows she'd made 6 years ago. Mom, Lisa said quietly, and David heard something different in her voice. Something he hadn't heard before when she talked to her mother. Did you really spend $47,000 on his credit card? Patricia's mouth opened and closed. It wasn't that much. I saw the statement last night. It was $47,238.65. Emma gasped. James whistled low. Even Richard looked shocked. You told me you were struggling, Lisa continued, and now David heard the anger creeping into her voice. You told me you needed help. So my husband, my generous, hard-working, successful husband, gave you his credit card to help you with necessities. And you spent nearly $50,000 on designer clothes and fancy restaurants and spa days, and then you called him useless? You don't understand, Patricia said, but her voice was weaker now. Everyone my age has nice things. The Johnsons, the Wongs, the Petersons, their children take care of them properly. The Johnsons' son-in-law Stephen is a venture capitalist who makes $800,000 a year, David interjected. I looked him up on LinkedIn last night. He's also 48 years old and has been building wealth for 20 years longer than me. Is that really who you want to compare me to? Patricia's face was bright red now. I deserve to have nice things after working for 40 years. Then buy them with your own money, David said simply. I'm not saying you don't deserve nice things. I'm saying you don't deserve to buy them with my money while insulting me. This is financial abuse, Patricia cried, and David almost laughed at the irony. No, he said, this is financial responsibility. Abuse would be if I tried to control your spending, or demanded access to your accounts, or prevented you from working. I did none of those things. I gave you free access to my credit for 18 months. You spent an average of $2,600 per month, and you called me useless. So now the free ride is over. Patricia grabbed her phone from the table. I'm calling my lawyer. Go ahead, David said. But you'll find that I haven't broken any laws. The card was in my name, you were an authorized user at my discretion, and I'm within my rights to revoke that authorization at any time. Your lawyer will tell you the same thing, probably for about $300 an hour. What happened next shocked everyone at that table, but they had no idea it was just the beginning. Patricia made the call. She went into the living room, and they could all hear her angry voice describing the situation. When she came back 15 minutes later, her face was ashen. He says, Patricia's voice was barely a whisper now. He says you're right, that I have no legal claim to your credit card, that it was a privilege, not a right. I know, David said. I looked it up last night. But what am I supposed to do? I have bills. Pay them with your income, like everyone else does. You don't understand. Patricia was crying now, actual tears streaming down her face. I have my apartment association dues, and my car payment, and my insurance, and you should be able to afford all of those things on $3,200 a month, David said, unless you've been spending beyond your means in other ways too. The look on Patricia's face told David everything he needed to know. What else? Lisa asked, standing up now. Mom, what else? Patricia sat down heavily. I might have opened a few credit cards, store cards, nothing major. How many? David asked. 4, Patricia whispered. Maybe 5. What are the balances? Patricia didn't answer. Mom, Lisa's voice was steel now. What are the balances? Around $32,000. The kitchen exploded. Everyone was talking at once. Emma was demanding to know how this happened. James was asking if she'd used his name for anything. Margaret was suspiciously quiet. Richard looking like he wanted to disappear. David held up his hand and somehow everyone went quiet. So let me make sure I understand, he said. You have $32,000 in credit card debt, which based on average interest rates is probably costing you around $650 a month in minimum payments, plus your $1,100 rent. That's $1,750 right there, leaving you with $1,450 for everything else. And instead of using my card for necessities, which would have helped you manage that debt, you spent $2,600 a month on luxury items, putting yourself further into debt. Patricia said nothing. And then you called me useless. Still nothing. Here's what's going to happen, David said. You're going to pack your things and check out of my house today. I'll call you an Uber to take you home. My treat, one last time. You're going to return every item you bought in the last 60 days that still has tags and can be returned. That should get me back about $8,000 of the money you spent. The rest I'll eat as the cost of learning an important lesson about boundaries. David, Patricia started. I'm not finished, David said, and there was something in his voice that made her stop. You will never, ever speak to me that way again. You will never make comments about my income, my background, my mother, or my value as a husband. If you do, you'll never set foot in my house again. And if you want a relationship with any future grandchildren Lisa and I might have, you'll remember that I'm the father of those children and you'll treat me with respect. You can't dictate, yes, I can. It's my house, my money, my family I'm building with your daughter, and those are my boundaries. You can accept them or you cannot see us. Your choice. Patricia looked at Lisa, desperate for support. But Lisa was staring at David with an expression he'd never seen before. It wasn't anger or disappointment. It was something else, something that looked almost like pride. He's right, Mom, Lisa said softly. Everything he just said, he's right. And that's when Patricia Chen finally understood what she'd lost. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you have not, because the ending of this story will blow your mind. And drop a comment below telling me what you think Patricia deserves after what she did. The Uber arrived at 11:15 a.m. David had called for an Uber XL to fit Patricia and her luggage. She'd brought a lot for a weekend visit. The driver helped load her bags while Patricia stood in the driveway, her face still red and blotchy from crying. Emma and James had decided to leave with her, both of them clearly uncomfortable with how the morning had turned out. Margaret, Patricia's sister, had given David a long look before leaving and said something that surprised him. "She had this coming. Good for you, son." Richard, Lisa's father, had pulled David aside privately. "I should have done something like this years ago," he'd said quietly, "before I lost everything. Patricia's always had champagne taste on a beer budget. It destroyed our marriage and damn near destroyed my business. Don't let it destroy yours." Now it was just David and Lisa, standing on their front porch, watching the Uber pull away. "I can't believe you did that," Lisa said. David tensed, waiting for the criticism. "I can't believe it took you this long," she continued. "David, I am so sorry. I should have seen what was happening. I should have defended you last night and 100 other times before that. I was so used to keeping the peace, to making excuses for her." "Lisa." "No, let me finish." Lisa turned to face him, tears in her eyes. "My mom has been treating you like garbage since we got engaged, making comments about your job, your background, your family. And I told myself she'd get better, that she just needed time, that she didn't really mean it. But she did mean it. And last night when she called you useless in front of everyone, I just sat there. I was embarrassed and ashamed, and I didn't stand up for you. What kind of wife does that?" "The kind who loves her mother and was trying to maintain a relationship," David said gently. "I get it, Lisa. I do. But I couldn't let it continue." "When did you decide to cancel the card?" Lisa asked. "Last night. The moment she said useless, I knew exactly what I was going to do." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed you to make your own choice this morning," David said. "I needed to know that when it came down to it, when your mother demanded you choose sides, you choose us, choose our marriage. And you did." Lisa wiped her eyes. "She's going to be furious for a while." "I know. She might not speak to us for months." "I know that too. Are you okay with that?" David pulled his wife close. "Lisa, I would have been okay if she never spoke to us again. But I also know she will. Because eventually she's going to need something. And she's going to realize that we're the only family members with stable income and good boundaries. And when she comes back, it'll be on our terms." They stood there for a moment, holding each other on their front porch in the cold November morning. "What are you going to do with the money she returns?" Lisa asked. David smiled. "I was thinking we could start that college fund we've been talking about. Even if we don't have kids for a few years, it's never too early to start saving." "I'd like that," Lisa said. But David Park had no idea that Patricia Chen's financial problems were about to become a crisis, and that his decision to cancel that credit card was going to trigger a chain of events that would expose secrets, destroy relationships, and ultimately force his mother-in-law to face the consequences of decades of poor choices. The real story was just beginning, and what happened in the next 2 weeks would change everything. 3 days after David canceled Patricia's credit card, on Wednesday, November 13th at 2:34 p.m., his phone rang while he was in a meeting at Amazon's Seattle headquarters. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, a 206 area code local to Seattle. He declined the call and went back to his presentation on cloud infrastructure optimization. The same number called back immediately. Then again. On the fourth call, David excused himself from the meeting and stepped into the hallway. "Hello?" "David, thank God." It was Patricia's sister Margaret, and she sounded panicked. "You need to come to Patricia's apartment right now. There's been an incident." "What kind of incident?" David asked, his engineer's brain already cataloging possibilities. "Just come, please. She's not handling this well." David arrived at Patricia's Capitol Hill apartment building at 3:15 p.m. It was a 1970s brick structure, rent-controlled, the kind of place that was becoming increasingly rare in Seattle's booming housing market. He found Margaret waiting outside Patricia's door on the third floor, looking pale. "What happened?" David asked. "Just prepare yourself," Margaret said, and opened the door. The apartment was in chaos. Moving boxes were stacked everywhere, half-packed. Designer clothes were strewn across the furniture, dresses still with tags, shoes in their original boxes, handbags piled on the dining table. Patricia was sitting on her couch in her bathrobe, staring at a pile of papers spread across her coffee table. "Patricia?" David said carefully. She looked up, and David was shocked by what he saw. In 3 days, she seemed to have aged 10 years. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair unbrushed, her usual put-together appearance completely gone. "You were right," Patricia said, her voice hollow. "About everything." David stepped closer and looked at the papers on the coffee table. They were credit card statements, bills, collection notices, and what looked like an eviction warning. "Talk to me," David said, sitting down across from her. "What's going on?" Margaret spoke up. "After you canceled her card, Patricia couldn't make her rent payment. She'd been using your credit card to pay her rent for the last 6 months, then using her retirement income for other things." David felt his stomach drop. "You used my credit card to pay rent?" "I had to," Patricia burst out. "The credit cards I opened, the store cards, the minimum payments were $650 a month like you said, and my rent is $1,100. That's $1,750 total, which left me with $1,450 for everything else. I was barely making it." "So you used my card to pay rent and spent your income on designer clothes?" David's voice was incredulous. "No, it's complicated." Patricia grabbed one of the statements. "This Nordstrom card, the balance is $12,400. I opened it 2 years ago because Emma needed money for her car down payment. I lent her $5,000 and she was supposed to pay me back, but she's barely making ends meet on her receptionist salary, so you've been carrying her debt," David finished. "And James," Margaret added quietly. "Tell him about James." Patricia's hands were shaking. "James lost his job at the warehouse in January. He couldn't make rent. He was going to be evicted. I let him stay with me for a while, but my lease doesn't allow long-term guests, so I had to help him get his own place. First month, last month, deposit, that was $3,200 on my Target credit card." David was starting to see the picture. "What else?" "My car," Patricia whispered. "I bought a 2022 Honda Accord last year, $31,000. I put $3,000 down on a Macy's card and financed the rest. The payment is $520 a month." "You bought a brand new car when you were already in credit card debt?" "My old car died. I needed transportation." "You could have bought a used car for $8,000 cash." "I don't have $8,000 cash," Patricia shouted. "I've never had that kind of money just sitting around." The room went silent. David looked around the apartment, at the expensive furniture, the art on the walls, the 65-inch Samsung TV, the designer, everything. "Patricia, this apartment is full of expensive things." "They're not expensive," Patricia said defensively. "They're nice. Normal people have nice things." And there it was, the fundamental disconnect. Patricia Chen had spent her entire adult life believing that she was entitled to a lifestyle she couldn't afford, and she'd gone into debt to maintain the illusion. "Walk me through your actual financial situation," David said. "All of it." For the next hour, Patricia laid it out. It was worse than David had imagined. 5 credit cards with a total balance of $32,400 at an average interest rate of 22.4%, requiring minimum payments of $648 per month. The Honda Accord car payment of $520 per month, with $27,300 still owed. Car insurance at $180 per month, high because of an accident 3 years ago that Patricia had never told anyone about. Renter's insurance at $35 per month, cell phone at $95 per month, an unlimited data plan with a financed iPhone 14 Pro that added $41 to the bill. Monthly prescriptions not covered by Medicare at $180, plus her $1,100 rent. Total fixed monthly expenses, $2,758. Monthly retirement income, $3,200. Money left over for food, gas, utilities, and everything else, $442. How have you been surviving? David asked. Your credit card, Patricia said simply. Once you gave it to me, I used it for groceries, gas, utilities, eating out, everything I couldn't afford with what I had left. And then I'd use my income to make the minimum payments on my cards and buy other things. Other things that you could have bought with my credit card instead of designer clothes, David said. I know, Patricia was crying again. I know I messed up. But when you have that kind of debt, when you're drowning financially, sometimes you just want to feel normal. You want to go to lunch with your friends and not be the one who can't afford the nice restaurant. You want to wear clothes that don't scream, I'm broke. You want to pretend just for a little while that you're not failing at life. David felt something shift in his chest. He was still angry, God, he was angry, but he was also starting to understand. Patricia wasn't a villain. She was a financially illiterate person who'd made decades of bad decisions and was now facing the consequences. The eviction notice, David said. When is that effective? December 1st, Margaret answered. She's been here for 12 years. The landlord was willing to work with her when she was late before, but this month she told him she couldn't pay at all. He's done. Where were you planning to go? Patricia didn't answer, just gestured helplessly at the moving boxes. She doesn't have anywhere to go, Margaret said. I'm in a one-bedroom in Tacoma. Richard's in a studio apartment in Portland. Emma and James both have roommates. And after the way Sunday went, you thought no one would help you, David finished. Patricia nodded miserably. David stood up and walked to the window. Capitol Hill stretched out below him, the Seattle skyline visible in the distance, the Space Needle, the Amazon towers where he worked, the city he'd built a life in through hard work and careful planning. He thought about his mother, who'd cleaned office buildings and still managed to save enough to help with his college expenses. He thought about the financial literacy classes she'd made him take as a teenager, classes he'd resented at the time, but now understood had saved him from this exact situation. He thought about the budget spreadsheet he'd maintained since his first job, the automatic savings transfers, the retirement contributions. Patricia had never learned these things, and now at 62 years old, she was about to lose her home. I'll help you, David heard himself say. Patricia's head snapped up. What? I'll help you, but not the way I was helping before. No more credit card. No more blank checks. We're going to fix this properly. David, you don't have to, Margaret started. No, I do, David interrupted. Not because I owe her anything. Not because of what she said or did, but because she's Lisa's mother. And because walking away right now wouldn't solve anything. It would just kick the problem down the road until it got even worse. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you would have done in David's situation. David pulled out his phone and started making calls. First to Lisa, explaining the situation. She was shocked, then angry, then sad, then quietly grateful that he wasn't just walking away. Then to a financial advisor named Sandra Martinez he'd met at an Amazon networking event. She specialized in debt consolidation and financial recovery. By 6 p.m., they were all sitting around Patricia's dining table. David, Lisa, who'd driven straight from her teaching job, Patricia, Margaret, and Sandra Martinez, who'd agreed to do an emergency consultation. Sandra was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd helped dozens of people dig out of financial holes. She listened to Patricia's situation without judgment, took notes, and then delivered her assessment. "Okay," Sandra said, "this is bad, but it's not unfixable. Here's what we're looking at. $32,400 in credit card debt, $27,300 in car debt, monthly expenses of $2,758 against income of $3,200. Patricia, you're upside down by about $57,000, and you're bleeding $442 a month before utilities and food." "Can she declare bankruptcy?" Margaret asked. "She could," Sandra said, "but at 62, with her primary assets being a car and retirement accounts, bankruptcy would damage her credit for 7 to 10 years, making it almost impossible to rent an apartment and potentially affecting her ability to get utilities or even a job if she needed one. It's a nuclear option. Let's look at alternatives first." "What alternatives?" Patricia asked weakly. Sandra pulled out a calculator and a legal pad. "First, the car. You owe $27,300 on a vehicle worth about $24,000. You're underwater. But if we sell it and use the equity from David's family to cover the shortfall—" "No," David said firmly. "I'm willing to help, but not by just throwing money at the problem. Patricia needs to learn to fix this herself." "Fair enough," Sandra said unfazed. "Patricia, is there any way you can increase your income?" "I'm 62 years old and retired." "You're 62 years old and healthy," Sandra corrected. "Retirement is a privilege, not a right. If you can't afford to retire, you work. Can you go back to your old field?" Patricia looked horrified. "Administrative work? I haven't done that in 2 years." "Then you do something else. Retail, customer service, tutoring, anything. Even part-time at $17 an hour for 25 hours a week would give you an extra $1,700 a month. That changes everything." David watched Patricia's face cycle through emotions: denial, anger, fear, and finally, reluctant acceptance. I could look for work," Patricia said quietly. "Good," Sandra said. "Next, the car. You don't need a $31,000 Honda. You need transportation. If we sell the Honda and buy a $7,000 reliable used car, a 2015 Toyota Corolla or Honda Civic, we eliminate your $520 car payment and reduce your insurance by about $80. That's $600 a month saved. But I'll still owe money on the Honda loan after we sell it," Patricia protested. "About $3,300, yes," Sandra confirmed. "Which brings me to David. Are you willing to loan Patricia money with a formal repayment plan?" David thought carefully. "How much are we talking about?" "I'm proposing a debt consolidation strategy. Patricia has $32,400 in credit card debt at 22% interest, which means she's paying about $600 a month just in interest, more than half her minimum payment. If you loan her $32,400 at, say, 5% interest with a structured 5-year repayment plan, she'd pay you about $610 a month, but actually be paying down the principal. Over 5 years, she'd pay you back $36,600 total, instead of paying the credit card companies $47,000 plus in interest alone." Lisa spoke up. "So David loans Mom money to pay off all her cards, and then she pays him back monthly?" "Exactly," Sandra said. "With a formal promissory note, interest rate, payment schedule, everything legal and binding. It saves Patricia thousands in interest while giving David legal recourse if payments aren't made." "And the $3,300 for the car?" David asked. "That could be part of the loan, making it $35,700 total," Sandra said. "Or Patricia could work out a payment plan with the dealership or bank." David did the math in his head. $35,700 was less than what Patricia had already spent on his credit card, and this time he'd get it back, with interest. "I'll do it," David said, "on 3 conditions." "Name them," Patricia said, and for the first time David heard humility in her voice. 1. You get a part-time job within 30 days and keep it for at least 2 years. 2. You sell the Honda and buy a cheaper car. 3. You work with Sandra for 6 months to learn basic financial literacy, budgeting, saving, credit management, all of it, and you stick to the budget we create. I agree, Patricia said immediately. There's a fourth condition, David added. But it's not financial. Patricia waited. You apologize. Really apologize. Not because you need my money, but because you understand that what you said was wrong, that how you've treated me for 6 years was wrong, and that you're genuinely sorry. The room went quiet. Patricia looked down at her hands, at the manicure David's credit card had paid for, at the rings she'd bought on sale at Nordstrom, at the life she'd built on credit and judgment. I am sorry, Patricia said, and her voice broke. David, I am so sorry. You were right. About all of it. I've spent 6 years judging you for not being wealthy enough, sophisticated enough, successful enough, when the truth is you're more financially stable and responsible at 38 than I've been in my entire life. I called you useless when you've been supporting not just Lisa, but me, and probably half this family without anyone even acknowledging it. I was jealous and insecure, and I took it out on you, and I'm sorry. David felt Lisa's hand find his under the table and squeeze. Apology accepted, he said quietly. Now let's fix this. They worked until midnight. Sandra drew up a preliminary budget, a debt consolidation plan, and a roadmap for Patricia's financial recovery. David transferred $35,700 from his investment account to pay off Patricia's credit cards and cover the car loan shortfall. Sandra wrote up a promissory note for $35,700 at 5% interest, to be repaid at $610 per month for 60 months, with the first payment due January 1st, 2025. Patricia signed it with shaking hands. Now, Sandra said, let's talk about immediate changes. Tomorrow, you're going to cut up every credit card except one. Keep your oldest card for credit history, but with a limit you set at $500 for emergencies only. You're going to call your landlord and explain that December's rent will be paid on time, and work out a payment plan for November. David, are you willing to cover November's rent as part of this loan? Add it to the total, David said. Let's make it an even $36,800. Sandra revised the promissory note. Patricia signed again. Phone plan, Sandra continued. You're going to switch to a budget carrier. $95 a month for unlimited data is absurd. You can get the same service for $40 at Consumer Cellular or Mint Mobile. But my iPhone will work fine on a cheaper plan, Sandra said firmly. You're going to pay off that finance phone and start treating it like the $1,200 computer it is, not a fashion accessory you replace every year. They went through every expense. Subscriptions Patricia didn't need, gym memberships she didn't use, food delivery services she could replace with cooking, salon appointments that could become once quarterly instead of monthly. The manicures could be done at home. The personal trainer was gone. By the time they were done, Patricia's monthly budget looked completely different. Rent, $1,100. Loan payment to David, $622, increased to cover the $1,100 rent addition. Car insurance, $100 with cheaper car. Renter's insurance, $35. Cell phone, $40. Prescriptions, $180. Gas, $120. Groceries, $300. Utilities, electric, water, internet, $180. Miscellaneous emergency fund, $115. Total, $2,792 per month. That leaves you with $408 from your retirement income, Sandra said. Once you get a part-time job making $1,700 a month, you'll have over $2,000 in breathing room. That goes into savings, real savings, in a high-yield account. Within 6 months, you'll have a $12,000 emergency fund. Within a year, $24,000. And in 5 years, when you've paid David back, you'll have learned how to actually live within your means. Patricia was crying again, but these tears were different. Relief, maybe, or gratitude, or the emotional release of someone who'd been drowning and finally found solid ground. "Thank you," she whispered to David. "Thank you for not giving up on me." David nodded. "We're family. But Patricia, if you violate any part of this agreement, if you miss payments or open new credit cards or fall back into old patterns, I'm done. Sandra will help you. Lisa will support you emotionally, but I will not enable financial self-destruction again. Understood?" "Understood," Patricia said. They left Patricia's apartment at 12:40 a.m. In the car, Lisa was quiet for a long time. "You're a better person than me," she finally said. "No," David said. "I'm just thinking long term. If we'd walked away, your mom would have been evicted, probably ended up moving in with one of us out of desperation, and the whole situation would have exploded even worse. This way, she has a path forward. She has accountability, and she has consequences. $36,800 worth of consequences that she'll be paying back for 5 years. "Do you think she'll actually stick to it?" Lisa asked. "I don't know," David admitted, "but Sandra's going to monitor her for 6 months, and if she doesn't, we'll know immediately. And if she defaults on the loan, I have legal recourse. The promissory note is a legally binding contract." "You really did your homework." "I'm an engineer," David smiled. "I always do my homework." But what David didn't know was that Patricia's financial crisis was about to reveal something much bigger. Something that would threaten not just her budget, but the entire family's relationships. And when the truth came out, David's careful plans would be tested in ways he never imagined. Because 3 days later, on Saturday, November 16th, at 9:47 a.m., David received a phone call from Richard Chen, Lisa's father, saying words that would change everything. "We need to talk about Patricia and about the $140,000 she took from my retirement account 15 years ago." David Park sat in his home office, staring at his phone, trying to process what Richard Chen had just told him. It was Saturday, November 16th, 9:52 a.m., and Lisa was downstairs making breakfast, completely unaware that her mother's financial problems went back much further and deeper than anyone had realized. "Say that again," David said carefully into the phone. "Slowly." "Patricia took $140,000 from my retirement account in 2009, Richard repeated, his voice steady but tight with old anger. "It's why I lost everything, why we got divorced, why I've been living in a studio apartment in Portland, working as a building inspector at 67 years old instead of enjoying retirement." David felt his carefully constructed solution to Patricia's problems crumbling. "Does Lisa know about this?" "No," Richard said. "Patricia and I agreed to keep it from the kids. We told them the divorce was because of my business failure, because I'd made bad investments. We never told them the truth, that Patricia drained my retirement account to pay off secret credit cards, and by the time I found out, it was too late to recover." "How did she access your retirement account?" "We had a joint account at Fidelity. Back then, either of us could make withdrawals. She took it out over 6 months in increments of $15,000 to $25,000, always with excuses. Emma's college tuition, James's medical bills, her mother's funeral expenses, house repairs. I trusted her, so I didn't question it. Then one day I logged in to check our balance before a big contract payment was due, and there was $4,300 left. She'd taken $140,000 and spent it all." "On what?" David asked, though he already knew the answer. "Credit cards," Richard said bitterly. "She'd opened over a dozen cards I didn't know about. Department stores, jewelry stores, vacation clubs. She was spending $4,000 to $5,000 a month beyond our income for years, and when she maxed them all out, she paid them off with my retirement money. When I found out, when I confronted her, she said she'd pay it back. She swore she would. But then my contracting business hit a rough patch. Partly because I didn't have that $140,000 to invest in new equipment, and everything fell apart. We lost the house, filed for divorce, and she never paid back a cent. David closed his eyes. This was so much worse than he'd thought. Why are you telling me this now? Because when Margaret called me after your meeting with Patricia on Wednesday, when she told me about the debt consolidation loan you were giving her, I realized you didn't know. You thought this was a recent problem, that it was about retirement and the credit card you gave her. But David, this is who Patricia is. This is a 40-year pattern of overspending, lying about money, and letting other people pay for her choices. Did you ever take legal action? Try to get the money back? What was I going to do? Sue my ex-wife, the mother of my children? Drag our family through court? I was already destroyed financially and emotionally. I just wanted it to be over. So I walked away, rebuilt my life as much as I could, and told myself the kids didn't need to know their mother was a thief. Richard, Lisa needs to know this. I know, Richard said quietly. That's why I'm calling, because you're about to lend Patricia nearly $37,000, and I don't want you to make the same mistake I did. She needs professional help, David. Not just financial advice, real psychological help for whatever compulsion makes her spend money she doesn't have to maintain an image she can't afford. They talked for another 20 minutes. Richard gave David dates, account numbers, rough timelines of the withdrawals. He even offered to send documentation. He'd kept everything, all these years, just in case. By the time they hung up, David felt sick. He went downstairs. Lisa was at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, eating scrambled eggs. She looked up and smiled. Hey, I made you some. What's wrong? David sat down across from her. I just got off the phone with your dad. Lisa's smile faded. Is he okay? He's fine, but he told me something about your mom, something that happened before your parents' divorce. David, if this is about their marriage, I really don't. Lisa, your mom stole $140,000 from your dad's retirement account to pay off secret credit cards. The kitchen went silent. Lisa's fork clattered to her plate. What? For the next 30 minutes, David laid it out. Everything Richard had told him. The joint fidelity account, the 6 months of incremental withdrawals, the dozen maxed-out credit cards, the lies about where the money was going, the collapse of Richard's business, the divorce. Lisa listened without interrupting, her face growing paler with each detail. When David finished, Lisa stood up abruptly and walked to the window. She stood there for a long time, her back to him, shoulders shaking. David realized she was crying. Lisa, she let us think it was his fault, Lisa said, her voice breaking. For 15 years, we thought Dad had made bad investments and lost everything. Emma barely talks to him because she thinks he destroyed our family's financial stability. James asked him for money for college and was furious when Dad said he didn't have any. We all judged him, and the whole time it was your mother who destroyed everything, David finished gently. Lisa turned around and David saw something in her face he'd never seen before. A cold fury that reminded him of his own expression when Patricia had called him useless. Call her, Lisa said. Call my mother and tell her to come over here right now. Lisa, maybe we should. Right now, David. We're done protecting her from consequences. We're done letting her rewrite history. I want the truth, and I want it today. Patricia arrived at 11:30 a.m., brought by Uber. She'd already sold the Honda Accord for $23,700 and was in the process of buying a 2014 Toyota Corolla for $6,800. She looked better than she had on Wednesday, more put together, almost optimistic. Sandra Martinez's intervention had given her hope. That hope died the moment she walked into David and Lisa's living room and saw their faces. Sit down, Mom, Lisa said, and her voice was ice. Patricia sat. David remained standing, leaning against the wall. This was Lisa's confrontation to lead. Dad called David this morning, Lisa began. He told us about the $140,000. All color drained from Patricia's face. Lisa, I can explain. Can you? Lisa's voice cracked. Can you explain why you stole from your husband's retirement account? Why you lied to your children about why your marriage ended? Why you let us think for 15 years that Dad was the irresponsible one? I didn't steal. What do you call taking $140,000 without permission to pay off secret credit cards? David interjected. Because in legal terms, even from a joint account, that's financial fraud. Patricia's hands were shaking. It was a joint account. The money was just as much mine as his. No, Lisa said firmly. It was retirement money. Money he'd earned and saved for your future together. And you spent it on luxury items and credit card debt you'd hidden from him. That's not joint money. That's theft. I was going to pay it back. When? Lisa shouted. It's been 15 years, Mom. Where's the $140,000? Where's even $10,000 of it? You've never paid him back anything. Patricia was crying now. I couldn't. After the divorce, I was on my own, trying to rebuild, and then I retired, and I didn't have enough money and you did exactly the same thing again, David said quietly. You spent 6 years making me feel inadequate for not buying you a vacation home in Maui, while you'd already destroyed one man's retirement and were working on draining my resources next. That's not fair. What's not fair, Lisa interrupted, is that Emma won't visit Dad because she thinks he's financially irresponsible. What's not fair is that James asked Dad to help with college and called him selfish when he said he couldn't afford it. What's not fair is that you've been playing the victim for 15 years while Dad worked as a building inspector at 67 years old to survive. And we all pitied you for having to start over after his bad business decisions. I'm sorry, Patricia sobbed. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it anymore, Lisa said. David and I are helping you now because we thought this was a recent problem, that you'd fallen into debt after retirement and just needed guidance. But this isn't new. This is who you've always been. Someone who spends beyond her means, hides it from everyone, and then plays victim when it all falls apart. Lisa, please. Here's what's going to happen, Lisa said, and David heard his own words from Wednesday echoed in her voice. David's loan stands. The $36,800, the payment plan, all of it. But there are new conditions. Patricia waited, terrified. 1. You call Dad today and apologize. Really apologize. And you tell Emma and James the truth about what happened 15 years ago. All of it. Lisa, no, that will destroy... What? Lisa snapped. Destroy their image of you? Good. They deserve to know the truth. 2, Lisa continued, you start seeing a therapist. Not just a financial advisor. A real therapist who specializes in compulsive spending and financial anxiety. David and I will pay for 6 months of sessions, but you have to actually go and actually work on whatever's driving this behavior. I don't need... Yes, you do, David said firmly. Patricia, normal people don't steal $140,000 from their spouse. Normal people don't accumulate $32,000 in credit card debt while earning $3,200 a month. Normal people don't spend $47,000 on luxury items while calling their benefactor useless. This is compulsive behavior, and it needs professional help. 3, Lisa said, if you miss a single payment to David, if you open new credit cards, if Sandra tells us you're not following your budget, or if your therapist tells us you're not engaging with treatment, we're done. You won't be welcome in our home. You won't meet any future grandchildren. We'll be civil at family events, but our relationship will be over. Do you understand? Patricia was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. You're my daughter, and you're my mother, which is the only reason we're offering this much, Lisa said, but her voice softened slightly. Mom, we want to help you, but we can't help someone who won't help themselves. And we can't keep enabling behavior that destroys the people around you. I'll do it, Patricia whispered. All of it, the therapy, the budget, The truth. I'll do whatever it takes. Good, Lisa said. Now call Dad. Patricia pulled out her phone with shaking hands. David watched as she dialed Richard's number, her face streaked with mascara and tears. Richard? Patricia's voice was small. It's me. I need to apologize. For everything. Lisa and David know about the $140,000, and I need to tell you something I should have said 15 years ago. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What I did was wrong. It was theft. It destroyed your retirement and your business and our family, and I've spent 15 years lying to our children to avoid taking responsibility. I can't pay you back. I don't have the money, but I need you to know that I understand what I did now. I understand the damage I caused, and I'm sorry. David couldn't hear Richard's response, but he saw Patricia's face crumple further, saw her nod, saw her whisper, I know. I know. Thank you for not hating me. When she hung up, Patricia looked at Lisa and David. He said he forgave me years ago, that he'd been waiting for me to finally admit the truth, but he'd let go of the anger because it was poisoning his life. He said he hopes I get the help I need. That's more grace than you deserved, Lisa said quietly. Learn from it. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, because what happens next will show you whether people can truly change. Let me know in the comments what you think Patricia should do to make amends. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Patricia made the promised calls to Emma and James, explaining what had really happened 15 years ago. Emma was devastated, angry at Patricia but also guilt-ridden for how she treated Richard. James was furious, accused Patricia of ruining his relationship with his father, and didn't speak to her for 4 days. But slowly, something shifted. Emma called Richard and apologized through tears. James drove to Portland to have dinner with his father for the first time in 3 years. Margaret, who'd known the truth all along, finally admitted she should have spoken up sooner. Patricia started therapy on Monday, November 18th, with Dr. Karen Okoye, a psychologist specializing in behavioral finance and compulsive spending. The first session lasted 2 hours. Patricia came out looking exhausted and emotionally raw. She said, I use spending as a way to manage anxiety, Patricia told Lisa and David over coffee that afternoon, that I grew up poor and developed a belief that my worth was tied to what I owned and how I appeared to others, that I've been trying to buy my way into a social class I don't actually belong to because I'm terrified of being seen as less than. Does that feel true? Lisa asked gently. Patricia nodded. My parents were immigrants. We had nothing. I swore my children would have better, that I'd never be the poor woman in hand-me-downs and bargain shoes. But I took it too far. I confused better with luxury. I confused financial security with financial display. That's good insight, David said. What's the treatment plan? Weekly therapy for 6 months. Daily spending logs. I have to write down every dollar and the emotion I was feeling when I spent it. Cognitive behavioral therapy to address the anxiety. And she wants me to attend Debtors Anonymous meetings. Will you go? Lisa asked. I don't have a choice, Patricia said. You were right, I need help. Real help. Not just a budget, but understanding why I ignore budgets in the first place. Patricia got the part-time job on November 21st. A position at a local library, shelving books and helping with computer classes, $18 an hour for 24 hours a week. It would add $1,728 per month to her income before taxes. She'd be working with people her own age, in an environment that valued education and community over consumption and status. It was perfect. She bought the 2014 Toyota Corolla for $6,800 on November 23rd, paying cash with the money left over from selling the Honda. It was silver, reliable, with 89,000 miles and a clean service history. It wasn't luxurious, but it ran well and the insurance was cheap. She cut up all but one credit card on November 25th, keeping only her oldest Visa with a $1,000 limit for emergencies. Sandra had her call the credit card companies to close the accounts properly, not just destroy the cards. By December 1st, Patricia's apartment was decluttered. She'd sold designer items she never wore, returned items that were still returnable, and donated bags of clothes to Goodwill. Her apartment looked different now, simpler, but somehow more peaceful. She made her first loan payment to David on January 1st, 2025, $622, exactly on time, transferred via Zelle at 9 a.m. With it came a text, first of 60 payments. Thank you for believing I could change. David showed Lisa the message. They were sitting on their couch on New Year's Day, starting the year together. Do you think she will? Lisa asked. Change, I mean, really change? I don't know, David admitted. Dr. Okoye says behavioral change takes 18 months to 2 years to stick permanently. Patricia's only been at this for 6 weeks. There will be setbacks. She'll have days where she wants to buy something expensive to feel better. But she has support now. She has accountability. And for the first time in her life, she has to face the actual cost of her choices. What about us? Lisa asked quietly. What about us? Do you resent me? For what my mom did? For not defending you sooner? For the money you lent her? David pulled Lisa close. No, I don't resent you. I love you. And this whole situation, as messy and painful as it's been, it taught us something important. What's that? That boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. That helping people sometimes means letting them face consequences. And that we're stronger as a team than I ever gave us credit for. Lisa smiled and kissed him. Thank you for not giving up on her. Or on us. Thank you for choosing us when it mattered, David replied. On January 15th, 2025, David received an email from Sandra Martinez with a subject line that made him smile. Patricia Chen, 75-day progress report exceeding expectations. The email detailed Patricia's adherence to her budget, her consistency with therapy, her engagement with Debtors Anonymous, her performance at her library job, and her improved relationships with her children. There was even a note that Patricia had opened a high-yield savings account and deposited her first $200. She's doing it, David said to Lisa that evening. She's actually doing it. Don't jinx it, Lisa warned, but she was smiling too. 3 months later, on April 9th, 2025, Patricia invited David, Lisa, Richard, Emma, James, and Margaret to her apartment for dinner. Not dinner at an expensive restaurant, dinner at her home, cooked by her, with food she'd budgeted for and prepared herself. It was simple: baked chicken, roasted vegetables, rice, salad. Nothing fancy, but it was the best meal David had ever eaten at Patricia's because it represented something profound: authenticity. Patricia was done pretending to be someone she wasn't. After dinner, Patricia stood up and clinked her water glass. I want to say something to all of you. These past 5 months have been the hardest of my life. Facing what I'd done, admitting my mistakes, living within my means, it's been humbling and scary and exhausting. But it's also been freeing. I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to lie about what I can afford, or steal from people I love, or perform this version of success that was killing me. She looked at Richard. Dad, I owe you more than I can ever repay, but I'm starting small. I've set up a payment plan, $100 a month from my library paychecks, transferred directly to your account. It'll take me 116 years to pay back $140,000 that way, but it's something. It's acknowledgement. It's trying. Richard's eyes were wet. Patricia, you don't have to. Yes, I do, Patricia said firmly. Not for you, for me, so I can look at myself in the mirror and know I'm trying to make it right. She turned to Emma and James. I'm sorry I lied to you about your father. I'm sorry I let you think he was irresponsible when the truth was I was the one destroying our family's finances. You both deserve better. Emma was crying. James nodded, his jaw tight. Patricia looked at David and Lisa. And to you too, David, you saved my life. Not with money, though that helped, but with boundaries, with accountability, with refusing to enable my self-destruction. You taught me that real love sometimes looks like tough love. And Lisa, I'm sorry I made you choose between your mother and your husband. You should never have been in that position. Mom, Lisa started. Let me finish, Patricia said. I want to share what Dr. Okoye helped me understand. I grew up believing my worth came from what I owned, that respect had to be purchased, that love was conditional on maintaining a certain image. So I spent money I didn't have to buy approval I never got. And in the process, I destroyed my marriage, damaged my relationships with my children, and nearly destroyed my son-in-law's finances while calling him useless. She took a breath. The irony is that David was never useless. He was the most useful person in my life. He gave me exactly what I needed, which wasn't more money to waste. It was a boundary that forced me to face reality. Sometimes the kindest thing someone can do is say no when you're asking them to enable your worst behavior. David felt something tight in his chest release. This was real. This was genuine growth. I'm not fixed, Patricia continued. Dr. Okoye says I probably never will be fixed, that this is something I'll manage for the rest of my life, like any addiction. But I'm 136 days sober from compulsive spending. I have $847 in my emergency fund. I've made 4 on-time payments to David. I have a job I actually enjoy. And for the first time in decades, I'm not lying to anyone about money. She raised her water glass. So thank you, all of you, for not giving up on me, for holding me accountable, for believing I could change even when I wasn't sure I could. They all raised their glasses, water for most, a single glass of affordable wine for Richard and Margaret. To truth, Patricia said, to consequences, to growth, and to family that loves you enough to let you face your own mistakes. To family, they echoed. After everyone left, David and Lisa stood on Patricia's apartment building steps, looking out at the Seattle night. Your mom really has changed, David said. I think so, Lisa agreed. But I'll feel better after 18 months, like Dr. Okoye said. Fair enough, David smiled. Lisa, can I ask you something? Anything. That night at Canlis, when your mom called me useless and you didn't defend me, what were you thinking? Lisa was quiet for a long moment. I was thinking that if I stayed quiet, everyone would just forget it happened. That keeping the peace was more important than standing up for what was right. I was choosing the easy path, even though I knew it was wrong. And now? Now I know that the easy path isn't always the right path. That sometimes love means being willing to have difficult conversations and set hard boundaries. That marriage isn't about keeping the peace. It's about building something together that's worth protecting. David kissed his wife. I love you, even when things are hard, maybe especially then. I love you too, Lisa said. Thank you for showing me what real partnership looks like. 6 months later, on November 9th, 2025, exactly 1 year after the disastrous dinner at Canlis, David and Lisa received a card in the mail. Inside was a handwritten note from Patricia. David and Lisa, 1 year ago today, I called David useless at a restaurant I couldn't afford, wearing clothes I'd bought with his money, while drinking wine he paid for. It was the lowest moment of my life, and I didn't even realize it at the time. Today I've made 12 on-time payments totaling $7,464. I have $3,200 in my emergency fund. I've worked 1,040 hours at the library. I've attended 47 therapy sessions and 52 Debtors Anonymous meetings. I haven't opened a single new credit card or made an impulse purchase over $50. And most importantly, I've started to understand who I am without the mask of expensive things. This year has taught me that the only useless thing was the version of myself I'd been performing. The woman who thought designer labels could fill the void left by poor self-worth, who measured love in dollars spent, who confused financial display with financial security. David, you're not useless. You're successful, generous, principled, and brave enough to set boundaries when everyone else in my life was content to let me self-destruct. You're exactly the kind of person I should have aspired to be. Thank you for the second chance I didn't deserve, but desperately needed. With love and gratitude, Patricia. David folded the card carefully and showed it to Lisa. They were in their living room, the same room where all the hard conversations had happened, where boundaries had been set and relationships had been tested. She's going to make it, Lisa said softly. Yeah, David agreed. I think she is. And in that moment, David Park understood the most important lesson of the entire ordeal. That sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or forgiveness or acceptance of their behavior. Sometimes the greatest gift is the courage to say, no more, change or lose me. Because real change doesn't come from comfort, it comes from consequences, accountability, and someone who loves you enough to let you hit bottom so you can finally start climbing up. Patricia Chen had hit bottom when David canceled that credit card, and in the impact of that fall, she'd finally found the motivation to become the person she'd always been capable of being. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.